I'm Eric Rosales. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly.
As President Donald Trump tries to negotiate a nuclear arms deal with Iran, today he welcomes Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu here to the White House. Reporters from around the globe covering. I'm White House correspondent Owen Jensen. I'll have that story.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is in the hot seat in Congress. The questions lawmakers want answered. Plus, special help from our mother.
I entrust everyone, especially the sick and their families, to the maternal protection of the Blessed Virgin Mary.
The message Pope Leo has today on the World Day of the Sick. These stories and much more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the feast day of Our Lady of Lourdes. Our top story tonight. President Donald Trump greets Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, at the White House. The discussion, new nuclear talks with Iran. Their meeting was closed to the press, but after the president posted on Truth Social that he, quote, insists that negotiations with Iran continue. But the president, who has used force against Iran in the past, also warned what could happen if a deal doesn't take place. For the very latest, let's check in with EWTN News Nightly White House correspondent Owen Jensen. Owen.
Eric, good evening to you. In that same social media post, President Donald Trump describing his meeting today with the Israeli Prime Minister as very good, adding both countries have a tremendous relationship. This, as President Trump has suggested sending another aircraft carrier group to the Middle East. After meeting today with the Israeli Prime Minister, President Donald Trump posts on Truth Social, last time Iran decided that they were better off not making a deal and they were hit with midnight hammer, that did not work well for them. Hopefully this time they'll be more reasonable and responsible.
The president's told his entire senior team that we should be trying to cut a deal that ensures the Iranians don't have a nuclear weapon. But if we can't cut that deal, then there's another option on the table. So I think the president's going to continue to preserve his options.
Late this morning, Benjamin Netanyahu arriving at the White House. Prime Minister pushing for expanded Iran talks, including limits on Iran's ballistic missile program and curtailing support for the terror groups Hamas and Hezbollah. Mike Huckabee, U.S. Ambassador to Israel, telling reporters Tuesday,
I think there's an extraordinary alignment between Israel and the United States. Everyone would love to see something that would resolve without war, but it'll be up to Iran.
Meanwhile, Iran marking the 47th anniversary of its 1979 Islamic Revolution. Huge pro-government rallies with chants against America. Thousands gathering in cities across the country. Missiles and satellites displayed. Iran insisting it is willing to negotiate over its nuclear program, as talks with the U.S. hang in the balance.
This mistrust has been created, and this was added to the previous mistrusts between parties. But there is a big challenge on the way of the negotiations.
Whether the talks succeed remains an open question, and Mideast nations fear their collapse could plunge the region into another war. In addition, the United Nations nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, has been unable for months to inspect and verify Iran's nuclear stockpile. Today's visit between President Trump and the Prime Minister comes as both Tehran and Washington are projecting cautious optimism after indirect talks in Oman last week. President Trump also posted on Truth Social that the two leaders discussed Gaza, where President Trump says tremendous progress is being made. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
And joining us now with more is Stephen Cook, Senior Fellow for the Middle East and Africa Studies at the Council of Foreign Relations. Stephen, great to be with you, and talk to us a little bit about President Trump and Iran. They say that they want to make a deal, but what kind of priorities would make both parties happy?
Well, it does seem that the parties are actually quite far apart. The president has said that he is hopeful that there will be an agreement. If there isn't an agreement, there'll be consequences. But I think the president wants the Iranians to stop enriching uranium, something that the Iranians have said that they will not do. And the administration has taken the position, in addition to nuclear issues, that Iran's inventory of ballistic missiles and its support for proxies around the Middle East are also on the table. The president's sort of gone back and forth on that. He said last week a nuclear-only deal would be acceptable, but then went back on it in an interview with Fox News and added back in the issue of ballistic missiles and proxies. So none of those things, though, have the Iranians agreed to. They haven't agreed to stop enriching. The ballistic missiles were the only really effective aspect of their defense during the 12-day war over this past summer. And the proxies have long been an arm of Iranian foreign policy. And they've worked quite hard to funnel money to Hezbollah, despite it being battered terribly by the Israel Defense Forces.
And Stephen, the president has even warned that he would use force again if a deal isn't struck. You know, what kind of timeline are we looking at here?
Well, it's an interesting statement because there is a lot of American force in the Middle East right now. We haven't seen this kind of buildup since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. I don't think there'll be an invasion of Iran, but there is certainly a lot of firepower in the Middle East. And it's the kind of thing that you cannot leave those forces there forever. We have global responsibilities. We've moved aircraft carriers from other parts of the world to the Middle East. So either the president is going to use that force or the Iranians are going to bend and agree to American terms. I mean, there are options for the president. There can be a kind of one-off strike like they did last summer, a broader set of ongoing military strikes to try to bring down the regime, extremely risky. There's also the Venezuela model to try to quarantine Iran. But the underlying issue is that you cannot leave large forces like that in the Middle East in perpetuity.
No, I mean, even on Capitol Hill, they want to do more sanctions, some of the lawmakers up there. But what I found interesting is in a post on Truth Social, the president said that, quote, there was nothing definitive reached between him and Netanyahu regarding Iran. So I have to agree there that they have different priorities, right?
Well, certainly the Israelis were alarmed last week when the president said a nuclear-only agreement would be acceptable to him. From their perspective, they and the United States did significant damage to Iran's nuclear program last summer. And what they're worried about is the reconstitution of Iran's ballistic missile program, which, despite Israel's air defenses having a success rate of about 90%, did a fair amount of damage in Israel. And Israel and the United States are running low on the interceptors that had helped protect Israeli territory from Iran's ballistic missiles. So that is the reason why Netanyahu was here, was to make the case to the president that any agreement with Iran should deal with the ballistic missile program as well.
Well, Stephen Cook, it's always a pleasure to get your insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Attorney General Pam Bondi was in the hot seat at the House Judiciary Committee hearing, looking deeper into the operations of the Department of Justice. Democrats wanted to grill her about the DOJ's handling of files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. But before the hearing, a group of Epstein survivors and family members called on the Attorney General to take responsibility.
To Ms. Bondi, we are deeply disappointed by the way you and your leadership in this department have treated survivors. And today, while you're being questioned, we ask you to look in the eyes of every single one of us.
Victims and their family members were in the hearing room, and from the opening gavel, Democrats were on the attack. They went after the Attorney General for not complying with the law to release all Epstein files and not releasing the names of all involved.
You acted with some mixture of staggering incompetence, cold indifference, and jaded cruelty towards more than 1,000 victims raped, abused, and trafficked. This performance screams cover-up.
Despite what the ranking member said, I have spent my entire career fighting for victims, and I will continue to do so. I am deeply sorry for what any victim has been through.
Several Democrats called on the secretary to apologize directly to the Epstein victims in the room.
Mr. Chairman,
Why
I have asked
didn't she ask Merrick Garland this?
I am
Twice
reclaiming
when
my
he sat in
time,
my
and
chair.
when I
will
reclaim my
continue to
time,
answer.
it is
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady has
I'm
reclaimed her
not going
time.
to get in the gutter for her theatrics. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them asked Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein.
The Attorney General then took aim at sanctuary cities.
What we've seen in Minneapolis, Where do all the criminals go? The gangs, TDA, MS-13. Where are they going to go? They're going to go to a sanctuary jurisdiction because they believe they're protected, and that's not fair to the citizens of those cities.
Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan fired back, saying the Biden administration's Justice Department under Merrick Garland had completely failed the American people.
What a difference a year makes. Under Attorney General Bondi, the DOJ has returned to its core missions, upholding the rule of law, going after the bad guys, and keeping Americans safe.
And by the way, oversight of the Justice Department by lawmakers is not over. Attorney General Bondi will be testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee in the coming weeks. Well, a grand jury has refused to indict Democratic lawmakers accused of sedition by President Trump after they released videos urging service members to reject unlawful orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
The Justice Department opened an investigation into the videos, which were back in November, which featured 6 lawmakers led by Senators Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin. All lawmakers had previous military or national intelligence experience. The videos were posted around the time of U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats near Venezuela. No information was given on what charges were brought, nor whether all the senators were charged. Well, a major blow to President Trump and his economic agenda late last night. 3 House Republicans crossed party lines and voted with Democrats to block efforts to shield President Trump from challenges to his tariffs. House Speaker Mike Johnson failed to whip up enough support to ban lawmakers from being able to challenge the tariffs. The move now opens the door for Democrats to move forward with their plans to repeal the president's tariffs. And later tonight, lawmakers will be voting on a bill authored by Democratic Congressman Gregory Meeks, which could overturn President Trump's tariffs on Canada. The January jobs report shows a strong start in 2026. Employers added 130,000 jobs in January, and the unemployment rate fell to 4.3%. The strongest gains were powered by the healthcare industry. However, corporate layoffs did take place as increased automation continues to reshape the private sector. President Trump seized on the jobs report and renewed his call to lower interest rates. In a post on social media, he described the monthly figure as, quote, far greater than expected. While a quiet mountain community is mourning after a deadly shooting spree in northern British Columbia, Canada, authorities say 10 people are dead following attacks on a residence and Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. 7 victims died at the school while in transit, while 2 others were found at a nearby home. The suspect, identified by police as an 18-year-old woman, was also found deceased. Over 25 others remain injured, 2 in critical condition. In a town of just 2,700, the motive remains unclear. Prime Minister Mark Carney joins the nation in grief.
We will get through this. We will learn from this. But right now, it's a time to come together, as Canadians always do in these situations, these terrible situations, to support each other, to mourn together, and to grow together.
A Russian drone has struck a home in Ukraine's Kharkiv region. The attack killed a father and 3 small children, 2-year-old boys, twin boys that is, and their sister. Police say the mother, who is 35 weeks pregnant, was also injured but survived. She suffered head wounds and even burns. The home was completely destroyed by the strike due to a fire. The local mayor called the attack a crime that is beyond human comprehension. Ukraine's President Zelensky says the attack is an indication that Russia is not serious about peace. We have a lot more to come on EWTN News Nightly. Free speech on trial. In Brazil, a vet student faces 10 years in prison over posts on gender ideology. We'll discuss. And backlash over Notre Dame's new appointment. It's a move that has some angry. Welcome back. Pope Leo has accepted the resignation of Archbishop Gregory Aymond of New Orleans. His Excellency has led the Archdiocese since 2009. The New Orleans native was ordained a priest in 1975. He will be succeeded by current coadjutor Archbishop James Cecchio, who was named to the position in September of last year. Bishop Kevin Rhodes of Fort Wayne, South Bend, Indiana, is voicing his opposition to a recent move at the University of Notre Dame. In January, the school named Susan Osterman as the school's Lieu Institute for Asia and Asian Studies. Osterman is pro-abortion, and the move has led to a stream of backlash for the Catholic institution. Well, today, Bishop Rhodes added to the backlash, saying in part, quote, having now read many of the op-ed pieces co-authored by Professor Osterman, I must express my dismay and strong opposition to this appointment that is causing scandal to the faithful of our diocese and beyond. And many Catholics are voicing their support for Bishop Rhodes' statement. Bishop Robert Barron of the Diocese of Winona Rochester said on X in part, quote, I believe that going ahead with this appointment is repugnant to the identity and mission of the great center of Catholic learning. Well, Catholic actress Patricia Heaton thanked Bishop Rhodes and Bishop Barron on X for their witness. Archbishop Aquila of the Archdiocese of Denver praised the statement, saying in part, quote, I pray that those who can rescind this terrible appointment will do so. In Brazil, a veterinarian student named Isadora Borges is facing a potential 10-year prison sentence, all because of 2 posts on social media. Back in 2020, Borges shared her views on gender ideology, stating that biological sex is unchangeable. She was reported to federal police for transphobia by a local politician. Under a 2019 Supreme Court ruling, transphobia is treated as a criminal offense equivalent to racism. Her defense, supported by Alliance Defending Freedom International, argues that this is a major violation of free speech. As her trial begins this week, the case has become a flashpoint for the debate over online censorship in Brazil. And joining us now is Julio Poole, legal counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom International, which is providing legal services to Borges. And thank you so much for joining us. Now, here in the United States, this is unheard of, not having free speech like this. So tell me more about the censorship in Brazil.
Yes, correct. Free speech in Brazil is in danger. We're basically in the dark ages for free speech in the country. Isadora's case is not an exception. There is a real trend of silencing speech. Many people cannot say what they want. Many people cannot say and voice their opinions on matters such as the reality of men and women, a biological reality. This is what happened to Isadora. She spoke on her X post 5 years ago, and because of that, a transgender politician brought the charges to the police, brought the case to the police, so the police could press charges against Isadora. Now she's facing over potential sentence of up to 10 years in jail just because she said what she believed was the truth. This is really dangerous for Brazil and for the rest of the world as well.
Now, the U.S. Supreme Court has been increasingly hearing cases surrounding gender ideology. Do you think that other countries could soon follow suit on this?
I think they should, but you know what? The problem is not just what the law says, but here is just the prosecutors that want to really punish people for what they say. Here, the punishment is the process, because then it creates a chilling effect in which nobody wants to speak. We have many cases in Brazil. One of those cases is, for example, Pastor Douglas. He wrote a book 3 years ago for his church, Assemblies of God, with over 30 million followers in that church. It was a basic book on what gender ideology is, philosophical foundations, theological foundations, and because of that, he was also brought into charges by the same prosecutors in Brazil. So what happened to Isadora, what happened to Pastor Douglas, what's happening to Nina Borges, also another of our clients from the UK that's suffering the same censorship. They cannot say anything on social media in Brazil because if they say it, then these prosecutors try to apply this law, better said, a decision from the Supreme Court that equates racism to transphobia and homophobia. So this, short answer, yes, they should follow what the U.S. is doing, but the reality is that they are not doing it because they also want to censor the citizens so that this truth cannot come to the public.
And Julio, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but where do you think this case might be headed, and what are the implications of this case for the entire Latin American region?
So it's bad precedent for Brazil, bad precedent for the rest of the countries, because first of all, because if we have a court, a Supreme Court, because eventually this might come to the Supreme Court, and if the Supreme Court decides, it will be one of the first instances that we know about of somebody being accused and successfully convicted for homophobia, transphobia, for what they posted online, which in this case, as in Isadora's case and many other people's cases, is not even an insult to somebody. Her posts were not directed to any person in particular. They were just mere opinions criticizing, or better said, theorizing on what Simone de Beauvoir said on one of her books when she said about talking about sex and gender on Simone de Beauvoir's writings. So it's just basically opinions, a theoretical level, philosophical level, and if that can be punished, you can imagine what they can do.
Sure. Well, Julio, thank you so much for joining us. Boy, I tell you, we're going to be following this case very closely.
Thank you.
Well, look, next on EWTN News Nightly, Sacred Invitation. Pope Leo issues a heartfelt call on the World Day of the Sick. Thousands of farmers marched in central Madrid to protest against the European Union's agricultural policies and free trade agreement with a group of South American nations. Farmers are upset and want food products produced in other countries to be produced under the same conditions that are required of them. Organizers say the new EU agreement will allow food into the country with lower health and environmental guarantees. The Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes today marks the World Day of the Sick, inspired by Pope John Paul II in 1992, 1 year after he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. On this day, Pope Leo has invited the sick to offer their suffering to the Lord for world peace and to bear witness to faith, hope, and charity. EWTN Vatican journalist Benedict Sedegren has more.
On the 34th World Day of the Sick, Pope Leo lit a candle at the miniature replica of the famous Lourdes grotto in the Vatican gardens. Each year, the day is celebrated on the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes, whose shrine in France is dedicated to the compassionate accompaniment of the sick and suffering. After the Virgin Mary appeared to 14-year-old Bernadette in 1858, Lourdes quickly became associated with healing, as Mary directed Bernadette to dig a spring which became a source of spiritual and, in some cases, physical healing. Since the apparitions, more than 7,000 cases of healing have been reported at the shrine. 72 of those have been recognized as miraculous by the Church.
This accompaniment is truly at the heart of what is lived at the Shrine of Lourdes, because it fully corresponds to the message of the Virgin Mary to Bernadette, to be close to those who appear before us.
The strength to welcome and accompany the sick and suffering Father Dauban shared with EWTN comes from faith, a faith that's strengthened by God and by those who suffer themselves.
I think that the sick teach us patience, they teach us faith, they teach us humility and simplicity. When we serve the sick, we become more authentic. And I believe that in our world, we truly need this truth in our relationships with one another.
The theme of this year's World Day of the Sick is the compassion of the Samaritan, loving by bearing another's pain. It presents the Good Samaritan as a model for Christians living in a society marked by haste and indifference, and it highlights the concrete gestures of closeness that love needs in order to grow. While the entire Universal Church observes the day, Pope Leo has announced that it would be celebrated in a particularly solemn way in his home diocese of Chiclayo in Peru.
I unite myself spiritually with all those who are gathering today in Chiclayo, Peru, to solemnly celebrate the World Day of the Sick, and I entrust everyone, especially the sick and their families, to the maternal protection of the Blessed Virgin Mary.
For the solemn occasion, the Holy Father sent Cardinal Michael Czerny, prefect of the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, as his special envoy to the Shrine of Our Lady of Peace in the Diocese of Chiclayo. Visiting hospitals, patients, and healthcare staff, he thanked all those who serve through their hands, mind, and heart.
The key message is you can and should be a Samaritan in such a way that we stop thinking about it, worrying about it, and complaining about it, instead reach out, take the first step, and recognize that somebody around us who's suffering needs us.
In Rome, Benedict Cedergren for EWTN News Nightly.
A very good message to live by. We want to thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Eric Rosales. Have yourself a wonderful night. Y vaya con Dios.